Hi there, welcome to Just Another Dev. And today we are going to cover the basics of GitHub in this video. So in our previous video, we have already covered the basics of Git. We have seen how to install Git, how to set up Git in a repository, how to create commits, and how to check out commits and see what changes we made in the past, right? So all this we have already covered. If you want, you can go back to that video and visit these concepts. So let's see what is GitHub, right? So GitHub is basically a place to create, store, and manage your code, right? And why do we need GitHub? So the first reason is basically you can store your code and you can access it from anywhere, right? So if even if you lose your system, you can log in into another system and you can clone your code again to that system using GitHub. The second reason is you can allow other users to collaborate as well, right? So as and when your project grows, you might need other developers as well so that they can contribute to your code, right? So GitHub basically helps you with that, right? GitHub can allow other users to basically push the code to your GitHub repository. So let's see that very quickly.
So the first thing that we have to do in order to use GitHub is basically create an account over there. So we'll directly go to the github.com, and here we can see an option to either sign in or sign up. So if you already have an account, you can go ahead and sign in directly. Otherwise, you can click on the sign up and it will ask you a few details. You can fill them up and then basically it will create an account for you. So once you log into your GitHub account, it will look something like this. And what we can do over here in order to create a new repository, we can click on this plus button, and here it will be showing a new repository in the menu, right? So if I click here, it will take me to a page where it will ask me a few details about the new repository, right? So I'll just name it Git tutorial because that is what my local repository is also named. So it will basically tell, okay, Git tutorial is available. Here you can provide a small description about your project. I'll just name it Git tutorial itself, and after that there are these options like public and private. So what is the access level for your repository, right? So if it's a public repository, then anyone can view that repository. They can clone the code as well, but they will not be able to make any changes to your repository, right? They cannot be able to commit any changes to your repository. While on the other hand, if you choose private, then no one will even be able to see your repository. It will be completely private. Okay. Now, there are these things where we can basically initialize the repository with a README file. README file is nothing but a long description of your project. Okay, what are the prerequisites? What things are required to run your project and all. And there is a .gitignore file. .gitignore file basically tells Git that these are the files that you don't push. Okay, you don't track. For example, there is a secret file or anything. So we can specify that in gitignore, and then it will not track those. And the final thing, we have a license. If you want, you can choose a license to your project. Otherwise, we are just going to simply create this repository. We are going to put them as default as of now. Okay. So now that we have created the repository, we are going to basically connect our local repository and this GitHub repository with each other. So how we can do that, right? So basically there are a few steps that they have provided. So this is the quick setup. And we'll not look into this, we'll look at these two, right? So here it is saying you can either use this thing, either you create a new repository on the command line or you push an existing repository from the command line. So we already have a repository created, and even if you see here, right, they are also doing a similar thing. They are creating this file, they are saying, okay, git init, git add, readme. So all these steps we have already done, right? So the main thing that we have to do over here is this thing, right? Git add remote, sorry, git remote add origin, and with this URL, which is basically the uh, address for our Git repository, right? So let's see what this command is and how it works. Okay, so here if we look at this command, it has got these keywords, right? So git remote add, right? So it is telling us that we are going to add a remote. Now what is a remote? Remote is basically the remote repository that we want to connect to. So here we have a local repository on our laptop or desktop, right? And here we have our Git repository on the GitHub server, right? So we call this a remote, right? We want to add this remote, and the name of the remote that we are going to use is origin. Okay, so we are saying, okay, add a remote, which is basically pointing to this URL. Okay, and the name of that remote is going to be origin. Okay, so what it will do, it will create an origin pointing to this HTTP GitHub. Okay, and a connection will be established between this local and remote repository, right? Now this is not a mandatory keyword, right? You can use it as GitHub as well, right? I can name my remote as GitHub as well. This is just the name, so I can change it and I can name it to GitHub, right? That will also work just fine. This is just the name. So now that we have understood the concept of remote, let us understand one more thing, right? So we have established this connection, right? So we have told our local repository that this is basically the remote connection to the GitHub repository, right? This is basically the endpoint which you will have to access when we are saying access the remote origin. Okay. Now, but there should be some authentication mechanism, right? How it is going to authenticate that request, right? So whenever it is trying to connect, there should be some authentication that is going to take place, right? So there are different methods of authentication provided by Git. One of them is HTTPS and the other one is SSH. So we are going to look at the SSH mechanism because it is fairly straightforward, and we just need to generate some SSH keys, and on every request to connect to this GitHub repository, basically if we are going to push something or if you are going to pull something, it will be authenticated using this SSH key. Okay, so let's see how that will work.
So in order to generate our SSH key, we'll have to go to our GitHub account, and from here we can go to the settings menu. So if we click on the settings, then we are going to see something like SSH and GPG keys over here in the access submenu, right? So if we click on this SSH and GPG keys, it is going to show us a list of the keys that we have already added. Since I have already added a SSH key for my MacBook, it is showing it over here. But we can create a new SSH key. We just need to follow a generating SSH keys tutorial over here. And if you don't have the key already, which if you're a new user, you might not have it already, so you can go ahead and generate it over here. So let me open it in a new tab, and here what we have to do, we have to follow these two things, right? So what we have to do, we have to generate a new SSH key, and you can select your operating system over here if it is Mac, Windows or Linux, and you need to follow this generate a new SSH key, right? So here they have given a set of commands. You can use this command. Basically here you will have to replace this email with your email which you have used to sign up on GitHub, and after following these commands it will basically generate a SSH key for you, right? Now what you'll have to do, the key that has been generated needs to be added to the GitHub account as well. So how we are going to do that? If you see this add a new SSH key, what it is telling you that you just need to copy that key that you just generated, right? So this pb copy is going to basically copy that key for you, and once you have copied it, you can come here and you can click on this new SSH key. You can give it a suitable title, let's say laptop SSH key for GitHub, something like that, and you can just paste the key over here, right? So once you paste it and add it, that SSH key will be added over here, and your local repository will be able to connect to your GitHub repository using this SSH key. So that would work just fine, right? So this is how we'll have to create an SSH key. So now that we have connected, basically created our SSH keys, we can go ahead and connect our local repository using the remote, right? So now instead of this HTTPS, I'll use SSH, and I'll use this uh, git remote add origin and this SSH over here, right? So you see the HTTPS and SSH URLs are a bit different. So I'm going to use this one. So let's copy this and let me go to my repository that I created. So this is the repository that we created from our last session. So if I do a git remote -v, then it is not showing us anything, right? So basically it is not connected to any remote as of now. So if I just paste this thing, git remote add origin, and basically use this SSH endpoint, what it will do, it will basically add the remote. So if I just check it again, you see it is showing us that the origin is added over here, right? Which is pointing to this SSH URL. And it is showing us for fetch and push. So fetch and push is nothing but when you are going to push something to the repository, and fetch is basically you are going to fetch something from the repository or pull something from the repository. So these are the endpoints, right?
So now let's try pushing the code. So if I do a git push, it is telling me, okay, the current main branch has no upstream branch, right? So what do we mean by an upstream branch is in the remote repository, there is no branch like main, right? So what we will have to do, we will have to create that branch while we are pushing it, right? So what we can do, we'll use this command git push hyphen set upstream origin main, right? So what it will do, it will create a branch called main in the upstream, basically the remote repository, right? And where we are pushing to the origin, okay? So we can see it has pushed all the changes to the branch main, which is basically we have created an upstream branch main and all the changes have been pushed over there, right? Now let's go to the GitHub page and see how it looks over there. Okay, so let me just refresh this page and then we should be able to see the changes that we have just pushed. Okay, so as you can see over here, so now our Git tutorial is basically copied over here. So we have created a remote repository and it is basically giving us these three commits that we created, right? And it is giving us the demo.js file as well, also the tutorial folder, right? Okay. So this seems to be working fine. We can see the commit history here as well, right? So you can go over there and see what all commits that we added. And now what we can do, now let's see how we can add collaborators to this project, right? So we have pushed our code to the GitHub and we will start adding collaborators, right? So what we can do in order to add collaborators is we'll go to the settings page. Okay. In the settings page, the first thing we are going to see over here is the collaborators, right? So if I click on this collaborators, it will basically ask you for the password. So you'll have to enter your password over here. Once you add the password, it will basically show this to you, right? So you can add people over here and you can use their username or email and they will basically receive an invite. And once they accept the invite, they will be able to push code to this particular repository, right? Before that, they won't be able to do that, right? So they can create their own branches, they can push this and create a PR. And once it is approved, it can be merged to the master code as well, the main branch as well. So this is how this collaboration is going to work, right? So once the users have got the access, they will basically go ahead and clone this repository. So it can be cloned using this HTTPS, SSH, or GitHub CLI. So we'll use the HTTPS part. So I'll just copy this and we can go to the terminal and use the command git clone. So let's see how that will work. Okay, so let's try to clone the repository. I will basically clone it in a separate folder. So if I just do this git clone and if I just type this HTTP URL, so it is basically showing me cloning into git tutorial, right? So if I do this ls then there is something called a Git tutorial folder which is created over here, right? So I can go into this Git tutorial folder and it will basically show me all the files and folders that we have created, right? So this is how the collaborators or any other user can clone this repository. So I'll remove it for now because I don't have any collaborators or anyone added over here. So I'll just remove this repository from here and we'll go to our main repository that we were working in, right? So this is uh, where we are working, right? Okay, now let's understand the concept of branch, right? So assume your project that you have created, it's maybe an e-commerce application which is working absolutely fine. There are hundreds of users or thousands of users who are visiting your application. They are placing their orders and everything is working just fine, right? So uh, whatever your main branch is having, this is the basically production ready code, right? So this code is completely stable. It is running live on production, right? Now, if there is a new feature that you want to add, let's say payment gateway integration or anything, right? So if you make that change directly into this main branch, which is basically running your production level code, then there are chances that something might go wrong, right? What if that piece of code has some bug in it, right? So you might face some downtime. Your service might start working unexpectedly, right? So we never directly push code to the main branch or basically the branch that we are using for production. Generally, it is always the main branch. We don't directly push anything to the main branch or the master branch. What we do, we basically create a new branch. We do our work over there, and then we move to the then we basically merge those changes to the main branch. Let's see how that workflow looks like. Okay, so this is basically our main branch, which is basically running live on a server, right? And this server is basically serving requests to the internet, right? So our main branch already have certain number of commits, right? And all this code is basically stable. Everything is working fine over there, right? Now, uh, whenever a new feature request is coming, right? So what we do, we generally create a new branch of this main branch, right? So let's say a payment integration request is coming, right? So in order to cater to this request, what we are going to do, we are not going to touch this main branch directly. Rather, we are going to create a branch of this main branch and we start basically making commits over there, right? We'll start making commits in that particular branch, right? So once we are done with all the commits, once we have made all the changes, we are going to create a pull request, right? So what is a pull request? A pull request is basically uh, a request which states, okay, I want to merge whatever commits that I have into the uh, target branch, right? So in the PR there will be a source and there will be target, right? So basically what code or what branch you want to merge into what target, right? So in this case, let's say we call it the payment branch. So here we'll say, okay, I want to merge my payment branch into the main branch, right? So what will happen? There will be a merge commit created, right? And since in the meantime, this feature was getting built up, there might be some new commits which are coming into master. Maybe some other branch has got merged or something like that, right? So once we merge it, there will be a merge commit created, right? Okay. So now this branch is successfully merged into this main branch and we can get away with this branch. We can discard this branch if we don't require it anymore, right? So this is basically how we create a branch, we create a PR and finally we merge it, right? Now let's see how that actually works. Okay, so now we are in our repository and let's see how we are going to create a new branch, right? So in order to create a new branch, we can use the command git branch and I can give the branch name. Let's say I want to call it payment, right? So what it will do, it will create a new branch. So if I do a git branch, then it is showing me there is a main branch and there is a payment branch. And it is showing me a star in front of my main branch because this is where I'm currently at, right? So I can go to this payment branch. So in order to do that, what I will do this git checkout payment. So if you remember from the last video from git, we can use the checkout branch to check out to a new branch as well, and we can use to check out to a commit as well. So now that I have changed my branch, it is giving me the message switch to the branch payment, and here also we are basically seeing the payment over here, right? Also, if you remember this diagram, when we create a new branch, it is basically going to have all the previous commit history, right? So since I created my branch from master, it is going to have all the commits from the master till the point I check this new branch out, right? So you see it has all the three commits, right? So now what I can do, I can make changes to this branch. I can push these changes to GitHub. Basically, I can push this branch to GitHub, and once I'm done with making all the changes in this branch, we'll raise a PR. So let's try to do that. Okay. So I'll just open this. Okay. So what I will do here, I will create a new folder called payment, and let me just add a new file over here. Let's say cod.js, and I'll just put a simple console over here. I handle the COD payments, right? So let's say this is what I'm doing. Also, let's try to over here itself, let's try to see the git ignore, how that works as well, right? So let's say we have one file which contains our secrets, right? So I'll just call it secrets.json. I'll add a secret.json file and I'll just create a simple JSON, my secret, and I'll just give it, okay, I just give this name. And now let's say I don't want this secrets.json to be pushed to GitHub, right? So it may be our production secret, or it could be something that I'm using in my local environment, and it is related to my local development server itself. So I don't want to push this to GitHub, right? So what I can do, I'll create a git ignore file. So I'll name it dot git ignore. Okay. Now inside this git ignore, I will mention secrets.json. Okay. Now if I save it, so the secrets.json will no longer be tracked, right? So Git will not track the secrets.json. Let's see it in the terminal, right? So if I do a git status, okay, so you see this, it is saying that I added a git ignore file and I added this payment folder, but it is not able to find out this secrets.json file, right? So this is basically very helpful when you don't want to push the, let's say the package.json file, not the package.json file, basically the npm packages in your Node.js or any binary files that you don't want to push to the server, or any logs that you are generating on your local, you don't want to push them to the server. So all these things can be put in your .gitignore, and it will not track those files, right? So this is a very helpful file and you can use it for these purposes. Okay, so let's get back here. I'll do one thing. I'll add these files. I'll add a commit. I'll name it, let's say, first payment type integrated, and I want to push it, right? So it is telling me there is no such branch in the upstream. Basically, in our Git repository, there is no such branch as payment. So what you can do, you can create a branch in upstream. So I'll just copy and paste this command. And what this will do, it will create a branch called payment over there, right? So let's see if it is created or not. So I'm over here. Let me just refresh it. Okay. So you see this, it is showing me payment has recent pushes 10 seconds ago, right? Over here as well, I can see this payment branch, right? So it has identified that we have a new branch created, and it is giving us a suggestion as well, right? You can compare and create a pull request. But uh, if your work is done, then only we create the pull request. But uh, if we have pending work, or basically this is not a branch which has the complete code for our feature, we don't create a pull request, right? We only create the pull request when our feature is done, right? So let's do one thing. Let's add one more commit, and then we'll say our feature is done, right? So again, I'll do one thing. I'll add one more file. Let's call it other types.js. So it will handle other types other than the COD that we have. So I'll just put console.log. I handle all payments but COD. So now we are going to add it again. Let's add it quickly. Let's call it other payment types integrated, and then I'll do a push again. Okay. So I just have to do this set upstream only once. After that, I can directly use this git push. If I uh, if I do this git push origin payment, that also will mean the same thing, but we can do a shorthand called git push. It will anyways push to the origin by default, and whatever branch we are having here, it will push to that branch only, right? So it has pushed the changes. Let's see over here. Okay, so it is showing that it has a recent push 29 seconds ago. So here also we can switch the branch, right? So if I switch from main to the payment, you will see there are 5 commits over here, right? So these two commits we just added, right? Now what I'll do, I will basically go ahead and create a pull request, right? So I'll do this. I can either do it with this thing, but after a certain period of time, if your branch has not received any recent commits, this option will no longer be there, right? So what we can do, we can always go over here in the pull request section and create a PR, right? So I'll do a new pull request, and here it is basically asking us which is the source branch that you want to merge. So I'll say, okay, I want to merge this payment branch to this main branch. This is my target branch, right? It is also called the base branch. What is the base and what do you want to compare it with, right? So I want to compare my main branch with this payment branch, and I want to merge these changes over here. Okay, so here if you see, it is showing us 2 commits, and these are the changes that we made. Okay, so let's create a pull request, and we can add a description, we can add a title. So I'll just say added all payment types. Okay, and I'll just do a create pull request. Okay, now this pull request is basically created. So I can go ahead and merge this pull request. And since I am the only person who is working on this Git repository, I have not added any contributors. I can go ahead and merge it directly. But in a scenario where there are multiple people working on the repository, and there is a person who is responsible for maintaining the project, so that person might basically go ahead and check your PR, right? So there will be an approval flow. So only once that person approves your PR, then only it will be merged. So what they will do, they will go to this files changed, right? And they can add their comment over here, right? Okay, why have you added this thing or something like that? Whatever questions or whatever concerns they have, they can add it here. Otherwise, if everything is fine, they can directly approve it as well. Here, I cannot see these approve and request changes option because I am the only user who has created it. So I cannot do these things on my own PR. All I can do is put a comment, right? So I won't do anything over here. I'll just directly merge it, right? So if I do a merge and confirm merge, it is going to merge it over here. And now if I go to the Git tutorial and we see the main branch, now it is showing us 6 commits, right? So 3 we already had, 2 we got from the uh, payment branch, and one is the merge commit that is created when we merge these two branches, right? So this is what the PR and merge flow looks like. Okay, now what we can do in our local repository, we can pull whatever changes that have been merged to the main branch. So what we'll do, we'll just do a git pull, and we should be able to see the changes that were made over there, right? So we see this git ignore, we see this payment COD, and we see this payment other types.js file, right? So this is basically how the developers will be able to pull the code which other developers have merged using the PR, right? So about it, we have covered most of the basics about GitHub and how we are going to work with Git and GitHub integration, how we are going to create a branch, and how we are going to create a PR, merge the PR. So this should be enough for you to get started. And please like and subscribe if you like the video and leave your comments down there. Thank you.